Hey everybody, welcome back to Calvi Homestead. My name is Brooke and today we are going to be preserving up our green tomatoes. So the first official frost is coming tonight and it really went all out. It is supposed to be 20 degrees tonight and it has not even hit 32 at night yet. So it really took a big leap and it's going to be cold for the next 2 nights. Which means we have to preserve pretty much all of our summer crop stuff. Now we've been pulling tomatoes off and letting them ripen, but I decided I don't want these green tomatoes to go to waste. And each year, at the end of the year, I usually pick all of my green tomatoes and preserve them. So what we really love to do with the green tomatoes is make a salsa verde, and we use the salsa verde mainly for like a white chicken enchilada, and instead of enchilada sauce we use that chili verde. You can dip chips in it. This isn't my favorite recipe to dip chips in. I like to cook with it. I have also cubed up chicken thighs and browned them up, pour the salsa verde over them, let them simmer for a little bit, and serve that over rice. You can do that with pork as well. We like to make ours a little bit spicy, so it will have a spice in it, but you can adjust that to the way you like it. But if you can see in my basket, some of these tomatoes are like a black or purple color. That is because of the variety they are, which is a Black Beauty. And then also you're gonna see in here some, well, that's a Black Beauty too, but some of them are blushing, which is totally okay. You can use some blushing tomatoes. This is probably the smallest green tomato harvest I've gotten, but that's because, well, we were dealing with soil health, and things weren't getting very big, but also a lot of our tomatoes ended up ripening, the big ones at least. So these are ones that kind of came on later in the year that never had a chance to get big enough. We got a couple that are an okay size in here, but this is not going to be a huge batch. But I did want to show you guys because I want to make sure I do have some salsa verde, even if it's a little bit for the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave the skins on these, and which they don't bother me at all. I feel like some varieties of tomatoes have a really tough skin, but usually when they're still in the green tomato stage, they're not as fibrous, I guess is what I would call it, when you cook it up. So I'm gonna chop our green and blushing tomatoes, measure them out, and see how many we have so we know what other ingredients we need. So let's get started on that.
So as you can see, well, look at that, little tomato is blushing. So I'm chopping my tomatoes up, and I'm just cutting out the core right there. I am not cutting these in like at any particular size. That's because I will be blending it up later on. So if you want to use this for a salsa, go ahead and chop it up into the chunk sizes that you prefer to eat with your chips. But this one I like to blend up. I love the texture of that. We'll get kind of like a restaurant style texture out of it. This one I was just cutting out the bad parts, or just imperfections on it, and then cutting out the core, and then just chopping. I ended up getting about 13 cups of tomatoes, so I knew how to adjust my recipe. I will leave the recipe down below, and it'll start with a smaller batch, and then you just kind of go up from there based on how many green tomatoes you have. So I'm just going to continue chopping these. You can see that one was blushing. I'm just sticking them in the measuring cup as I chop. But I will leave that recipe down below, and I'm going to keep on chopping until we get to the next one. All right, now we are chopping up our red onion. Now, I prefer red onion in almost every recipe I use. I just really love red onions. So if you only have white onions or yellow onions, go ahead and use that in this recipe. I really love the red onions in this recipe though, but I am a little biased. So I think I needed 3 onions for this, and part of one of my onions was bad. So I ended up only, or losing like a third of an onion. So I think for me, it was close enough to, just go ahead and add it in there with a third less onion than, the recipe called for. Okay, now we were getting into the jalapenos. These are the lemon spice jalapenos, and they are so pretty. I think I used 1 green jalapeno in there too, but I think I added more than the recipe called for. I can't quite remember. I'll have to double check the recipe, but I thought these were so pretty, and it didn't end up being way too spicy or anything. It just perfect amount of spice that hit you kind of at the end. So yeah, this was the perfect amount for us. By the way, if you are smart, unlike me, you will use gloves when dealing with peppers because you don't want to touch your face or have your fingers burning later on. I am kind of a rebel when it comes to that. And I really should invest in some gloves to use when dealing with peppers. Now we're adding the garlic. I love garlic. Garlic pretty much goes into every single dish I make unless it's a dessert. So I'm just chopping this up a little bit because I don't want the blender to miss pieces and have a huge clove of garlic in there. Now this recipe calls for limes, and I did have some limes, so I just juiced up the limes I had, and then in the rest of the measurements I used lemon juice, and it was still super good. Typically you use bottled lime or lemon juice. There I am adding lemon juice. Yeah, so this is what it looks like. It is so stinking pretty. Now we're doing the seasonings. It'll be listed down below, but we have some salt, cumin, oregano, garlic powder, pepper. So I just mix that up to add a little bit later, and then we're going to get our cilantro ready for when we add it. I don't add this right away. Okay, I was just kind of getting my jars ready for this. So what we're gonna do now, after you get it all in the pot, look how much juice has released from that. It's fine because we are going to puree this up with my stick blender, the immersion blender. If you don't have one of those, you can use just a regular blender. But as your vegetables kind of cook down, they're going to release juices. Once they release these juices, you're going to keep stirring constantly, but you want to bring this to a boil, and you're going to boil this for about 10 minutes before we move on to the next step. But it smells so good already. Like, I want to try a bite, but I know I shouldn't yet. But it smells so good, and we don't even have everything added in here. So once this kind of boils a little bit harder, I'm gonna let it go for about 10 minutes to let everything soften up, and then I'll bring you back. Okay, as you can see, this is boiling nicely. Just one thing I wanted to add, make sure you're stirring this constantly. I'm using a very heavy bottomed pot to help with heat distribution and to help where it doesn't scorch, but you still need to be stirring this constantly because a lot of the pieces want to sink to the bottom
which can cause them to scorch if you're not stirring it constantly. So I think this is about ready to blend up with a stick blender. Everything's softened for the most part. But before I do that, let's go ahead and turn it down just a hair. Before I do that, I'm gonna add in the rest of the ingredients. So we're gonna add that seasoning blend that we mixed up together. And about a cup of chopped cilantro. And then we're gonna give that a good stir. Let that cilantro cook just a hair. And then we can get the stick blender in there. Now, you don't have to actually blend this up if you don't want to. You can chop it up. You can even leave it in the pieces you chop it up at. My pieces I chopped a little bit too big to do that, and we like it blended. We just prefer it that way. But yeah, if you can even stick them in like a food processor to finely chop everything up before you start, which I probably should have done, but or you can leave it chunky, whichever you prefer. So I'm gonna get my stick blender and we're gonna go ahead and blend this up. All right, I went ahead and took it off the heat for when we blend, but as you can see, you can tell everything's kind of like melding together. This is not gonna be your traditional green salsa verde because we have those Black Beauty tomatoes in there, which have the dark purple skin. We also had a few blushing tomatoes, which shouldn't have made a huge difference. I think it was those Black Beauties that did it. And then we have some yellow peppers and a green pepper in there, but I think those Black Beauties really change the color of it, which I don't care. It's still beautiful. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick this in here and just kind of get it to the consistency we like. So I'm just gonna kind of lift it up, check it, see where we're at here. And I'm really liking this consistency. There are a few chunks in there. It gives me like restaurant salsa vibe texture, just a tad chunkier. So I like that. I like the look of that. We're gonna go ahead and let this simmer until our jars are ready. I have them in the electric pressure canner right now warming up, and then we'll fill our jars and process them. Okay, something I didn't tell you to do that is absolutely a must is you need to taste your salsa verde. Let's see if we can kind of show you the color. The lighting isn't the best over there on the stove, so it's still giving off green vibes, which is good. You'll be able to see it better when I fill the jars, but let's taste this first and see if it needs anything else. Ooh, that's really good, actually. Nice and spicy, but not too spicy. I'm just gonna put a hair more salt in there, I think. Hair more salt, and I think it'll be perfect. Also, the flavors haven't had a super long time to meld together, so that could be part of that too. But I am gonna add some salt. My jars are, it's saying fill jars, so we're about ready to fill jars, and we'll get them canned up. All right, I couldn't help myself. I needed to clean up a little bit before I filled those jars, and of course have a drink of my coffee. So I'm just gonna clean up a little bit, and then we will fill those jars together. All right, so now I'm gonna fill these jars up, and I'm hoping we get about 7 pints. I mean, I hope we get more than 7 pints, but at at least 7. And we want about a 1/2 inch of headspace here on these. And then we're gonna be water bath canning. So what you're gonna do is after you fill the jars, get your lids on, stick them in the water, make sure they're covered with at least 1 to 2 inches of water. Since we're putting these jars in there warm or hot, make sure your water is at a like temperature in your pot. And then you're gonna turn it up. Oop, that one's too full. You're gonna turn it up and let your water come to a rolling boil. Once your water comes to a rolling boil, you'll start your timer for 20 minutes for these pints. If you're doing half pints, it is still 20 minutes for this. So I'm just gonna continue to fill these up with a 1/2 inch of headspace. I am gonna have to take one out of, or take some out of the one next to this. I don't think we're gonna get 7 pints. I don't know, maybe. We'll see. Getting this is better than letting those green tomatoes freeze during the frost. And plus this is one of my favorites. It's what I look forward to at the end of the growing season is making salsa verde. This is probably my smallest batch that I've made, but I'm still happy to get it. I mean, the color's really pretty with those Black Beauty tomatoes in there. It's greener than I thought it was. The lighting over there isn't super great. Filling these up too much. You want to make sure they have proper headspace. I'm just kind of overdoing it. This one especially. I know I said in the beginning, I don't know if I'd eat chips with this. This time around that I made this, I would definitely eat chips with this. It's that good. I've actually never made, what's hot? I've never made salsa verde with tomatillos. So this is kind of my baseline whenever I think of salsa verde. I don't grow tomatillos. I've thought about it, but this just works out so well. I love them with the green tomatoes. We're not gonna make that last one, but we'll fill the jar anyway with what we have left. Probably not the safest thing to do, but I want to get as much as I can out of there. I was hoping for 7. That's what I was guessing was 7. We got 6.5, which is fine. Now I'm going to wipe the rims of these. So I'm just going to take a clean paper towel or washcloth, dip it in a little white vinegar and clean the rims off, because when you put your lid on, if there's anything on the top of the rim, so between the rim and your seal, it could cause a seal failure where either your jar seals and then unseals later or never seals at all. It could be something as small as a piece of seasoning that could cause your seal to fail. So we're definitely gonna clean these up and put the lids on. And we are out of white vinegar. So what I'm gonna do is just take this cloth, dip it in the vinegar, squeeze out a bit. I'm gonna wipe every single, because there's stuff on it already, every single rim. And vinegar is just the most like if you just use water, it may not get all the residue off. Vinegar just helps clean it that much better, especially when you're canning something like chicken stock, because it has more oils and fat in it. And I'm glad I cleaned these because I'll show you. That's what came off those rims. So just for me dripping and stuff like that. All right, I'm gonna get the lids on these. So how you wanna do it is just finger tight. Don't crank them down or anything like that. We're just going finger tight with these. So till it stops, and then barely a little bit more. It's kind of hard to explain, fingertip tight, but once you've been doing it, you really like, I think you just kind of like in your mind want to crank them down, but you can't do that because anything that needs to escape out of that seal won't be able to escape if you crank them down too tight. So we're gonna get these in the water bath canner. Another trick I like to use when water bath canning is to, I already did this, but put a splash of white vinegar in your water so you don't get a calcium buildup or that white fog on the outside of your jars. And remember, the water needs to cover your jars by at least 1 inch. I got about 2 inches there. It's getting pretty full. All right, I'm gonna put the lid on and run this for 20 minutes. For yours, you're gonna wait for it to, if you don't have an electric one, you're gonna let it come to a rolling boil first and then start your timer for 20 minutes. Thanks so much for joining me today making our yearly Salsa Verde with green tomatoes. You will not regret making this. So if you still have time or still have green tomatoes, make this recipe because you will start making it every year from here on out. It is so good, so delicious. And if you try it, please let me know. I'll try to post the measurements down below. I'm going to post the original recipe's measurements, which I think is 7 cups of green tomatoes. I had 13, so I adjusted according to that recipe. It is a ball recipe, so I'll post that down below, and then you can just kind of adjust based on how many green tomatoes you have. So thank you so much for being here with me today, and I hope you come back to see us next time. Go ahead and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and hit that bell notification if you want to know next time I post. But since we have a freeze happening tonight, I need to go out and pick all the rest of our peppers before it's too late. So I'm going to be busy doing that, and we'll see what we get. And then hopefully in the next few videos, I can show you what we decide to do with all of our hot peppers. Bye guys.